Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd Podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. So the Big Ten went 17-1, and this is something I thought about. Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC, especially Texas, and the way they can recruit that state, it makes it a better conference. But adding Washington, Oregon, and USC to the Big Ten is not a slight upgrade. I could argue that after Ohio State, now that Harbaugh's gone, after Ohio State, if I said the next 5 years, the second, third, fourth, and fifth best teams in the Big Ten were Oregon, USC, Michigan, Washington, I don't think it's crazy to suggest that adding three of the best four programs in the conference, if Utah always counts, I think, in that foursome, but with the right coach, USC, Oregon, Washington, those are playoff teams. Every time Washington's had a good coach, Don James, Rick Neuheisel, Chris Peterson, Kalen DeBoer, they vie for a national championship. Yeah. So it's like, I don't think people understand. It's Texas, Oklahoma make the SEC thicker. You added three on any given year, top 12 programs to the Big Ten. May it be a better overall conference now?
I think over the course of time, I think this year there's going to be a lot of reaction to the SEC. Their quarterback play, Colin. I mean, I'm going to give Oregon a little bit of a pass. I mean, that game was really weird. They played Boise. They played Boise this week. They better kick their ass and kind of get after it because that was bizarre. The quarterback play, I didn't know that much about him. I'm sure you heard his name, the Nico kid from Los Angeles. That's Tennessee's quarterback. I got news for you. That guy's pretty special. Jackson Dart, Ole Miss, they're pretty good. Obviously, the two quarterbacks. The quarterback Dylan Gabriel's at Oregon because they told him you're not going to start. Jackson Arnold's going to start. He's pretty good too. Their high-end teams with their quarterbacks are obviously Carson Beck and Georgia. Yeah. Over the course of time, I think, USC is only going to get better if they keep looking like this over the next 2 or 3 years. Yeah. Oregon's not going anywhere. But I got a lot of question marks about Wisconsin, about Minnesota, like the 4, 5, 6, 7 group of their teams. Penn State, you feel pretty good. Penn State could be a major problem. I was texting scouts all weekend long. I mean, their front seven's full of NFL guys. And if that quarterback takes a big step, that game got delayed for 25 hours, but they could be a serious factor. I mean, a serious factor.
I think
so. I think the high end of the Big Ten and the SEC, it's pretty clear that though Miami, I would still kind of red flag the quarterback can be up and down, but they're pretty talented.
Yeah, Cam Ward, I watched a lot of Cam Ward at Washington State. Cam's a lot of fun. I don't know if he's an NFL guy, but he's a lot of fun. He kind of just slings it. It's got an almost 7-on-7 feel to it. He's slinging stuff. And they just have been so inconsistent at quarterback. I think he's a playmaker, so I think he makes them interest. I think they can beat almost anybody and lose to a lot of teams. I still don't love Mario Cristobal as a situational coach. He's got a little Dan Campbell. I like the physicality. I like the culture. I don't know if I love the game management much.
He can recruit. One thing that really jumped out to me, and I'm sure you would agree, is did you see the ratings on some of the games on Saturday?
Just going to bring it up.
And I talked about this last night, the synergy of the NFL, the draft, and college football. It's all under this umbrella now, right? Yeah. So you're watching, you're like, wait, who's this quarterback? Yeah, he might be a first rounder. Colorado and North Dakota State doing 5 million people on Thursday night. And one thing I think, and listen, they've never had a czar or a commissioner. The NCAA is a laughingstock to everyone at every individual program. No, we need to play real games. I have no problem like Michigan playing Fresno State or Oregon playing Boise State or some of those teams in the South, like the one Dilford's at. Like those are Power 5 or non-Power 5, whatever they consider it, but they're Division I. You should not be allowed to play and I got a lot of respect for the Montanas and stuff. You should get one of those games, and then everyone else in non-conference should be a Power 5 program because the more and more TV has power because they're cutting the bills, we got to wipe that out because how good that felt like an NFL light game last night. The physicality in Notre Dame and A&M. A&M's quarterback's got some serious issues, but the hitting in that game, it felt like how many NFL guys are on this field? And then you go to some of these other games, and I understand like Ole Miss, they've been recruiting or scheduling these games forever. They're a joke. I mean,
Yeah.
Missouri, Ole Miss, some of these teams are beating teams 60-0. Like, what are we doing? And then they get mad fans don't show up. Play
Yeah.
real games, play real teams, and everyone is zoned in.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up because the ratings were spectacular this weekend. And people could say, well, there's nothing else on. Yeah, there was. WNBA is getting big ratings with Caitlin Clark. Major League Baseball races. Don't tell me nothing was on. There was plenty of on. Plus, it's the summer. People aren't watching TV, right?
People
It's Labor
outside.
Day.
Yeah.
And it's Scotty Scheffler's golfing. There was plenty on TV. It got ratings because I think, John, it's almost like, have you ever been asked to go to a party and you're like, well, who's going to the party? And it's like, oh, there's two couples. Yeah, let's go to the party. It'd be a fun party.
Yeah.
I think college football got so regional and so southern that I saw some research on this about a month ago, that the Northeast and the West didn't feel included. And those are population centers, and they just didn't watch. And now with the 12-team playoff, you're like, it's a party. You're asking, well, who's in the party? And you're like, well, there's going to be 12 teams in the party. I think when USC was rolling, LA was getting ratings. The West Coast was getting ratings. They felt represented.
Big
And
time.
when Notre Dame and Penn State are good, then the Northeast feels represented. But when it's LSU and Georgia, Southern guys like college football is great. It's not. It's regional. It's tribal. I stopped talking about it on my radio show.
Well, it's 4 programs. It was Bama, Clemson, Georgia, Florida State,
Ohio State.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is it's now a party that everybody, like, if you're a Notre Dame fan, you're like, we can lose 2 games and get into the party. USC's like, if USC beats Michigan, you look at that schedule, they can lose to Penn State or Notre Dame. They're getting into the party. And I think it's just a part. It feels like finally all these years of this nonsensical scheduling where SEC teams are playing Citadel 4 times.
Yeah.
It feels like now I'm willing to emotionally engage on Labor Day weekend because there'll be a payoff at the party later, a more equitable, reasonable payoff with more people included.
I've always thought, and my thing was with the SEC, is that Nick Saban was almost a Tiger Woods, Steph Curry-like figure. Even if you didn't, you could live in California or live in Washington or live in the Northeast, you kind of paid attention. You might not watch the games, but he was just such a big figure.
Yeah.
And his presence forced all these other programs and the money he brought in. Then it forced the Oregons, the Ohio States, the Michigans, really Florida State, Clemson to up their game. And it's benefited everybody. And I think you really see that with, Colin, how many Southern California kids are playing all over the country? When I was in high school in the early 2000s, there were the occasional Tom Brady to Michigan or DJ Williams went to Miami. But for the most part, you went to USC, UCLA, probably Oregon or Washington, right? It was very rare and now the overlap of the recruiting is like, oh, I can relate to this guy. All these teams are good. It's just really, and I think I'm more likely to watch the SEC now because they have Southern California guys or CJ Stroud. It's like, oh, he's LA kid starting quarterback for Ohio State. I'm it. And I think the world is so flat now in college football. The other thing is with the transfer portal. Yeah. I watch this quarterback at my team. If I'm an Oklahoma fan, what's Dylan Gabriel doing in Oklahoma? It's really added. Think of if you're a Washington State guy, you're keeping an eye on Miami. There have been so many just factors of the streamline. It's so connected now to the NFL. It's what college basketball used to be in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, right? It felt like 1A and 1B. And now college football is like that. You feel like you're watching the minor leagues, but it feels big leagues because how cool are these games, right? Because of the ambiance and the vibe of the stadium. How awesome. I think one of the best things to happen in football was the Raiders going to Vegas because it created the stadium, and now they have all these huge events there.
It's great.
It was awesome.
So good. It was so good.